You're sitting in a room full of people, laughing at the right moments, nodding along, saying the right things, and somehow you've never felt more alone. Not because they're bad people, not because anything is wrong with them, but because somewhere in the middle of the conversation, your mind drifted somewhere else entirely. To a question no one asked, to a feeling you couldn't name, to a thought that felt too big, too strange, too you to say out loud, so you kept it to yourself. Again, and the worst part? You've done this your whole life. There's a certain kind of person who moves through the world slightly out of sync with it. Not broken, not behind, just tuned to a different frequency. And if you've ever felt that quiet, unexplainable sense that you experience life differently than the people around you, this might be the most honest thing you've ever heard about yourself. Because you're not imagining it. Sign 1. You feel exhausted after social interactions, even good ones. Not because you don't enjoy people. You do. But after a dinner, a party, even a conversation you genuinely liked, there's this wave, this need to be completely alone and completely quiet, to decompress. Like your nervous system just ran a marathon while your face was smiling. Most people refuel around others. You refuel in silence. Psychologists call this introversion, but it goes deeper than that. Research by Dr. Elaine Aron on what she calls the highly sensitive person, or HSP, found that roughly 15 to 20% of people have a nervous system that processes stimulation more deeply, more thoroughly. You're not just hearing the music at the party. You're unconsciously tracking the tension between two people across the room, processing the lighting, noticing the subtle shift in someone's mood, absorbing all of it, simultaneously. That's not weakness. That's a brain doing more work than most people even know is possible. Sign 2. You've always felt slightly older than your age. Even as a child, you preferred listening to adults over playing with kids your own age. You asked questions that made grown-ups go quiet. You felt the weight of things, death, time, meaning, while other kids were still just being kids. It's called existential precocity. And it can feel like a gift and a wound at the same time. Because when you're 7 years old wondering why anything exists, and the world only wants you to color inside the lines, you learn quickly to hide that part of yourself. You're still hiding it, aren't you? Sign 3. You can feel the energy in a room before anyone speaks. You walk in and you already know. Something's off. There's tension here. That person is performing happiness. These two just argued before you arrived. You don't know how you know. You just do. This isn't mystical. It's neurological. Humans have mirror neurons, brain cells that fire, both when we do something and when we observe someone else doing it. They're the foundation of empathy. But in some people, this system is extraordinarily sensitive. You don't just read people, you feel them. Their mood bleeds into yours before a word is ever exchanged. The cost? You sometimes don't know which emotions are yours and which ones you picked up from the room. Sign 4. You have a complicated relationship with small talk. It's not that you're arrogant. It's not that you think you're above it. It's that something in you genuinely struggles to care about surface-level conversation, when what you want, what you need, is something real. You'd rather sit in silence with someone than fill the air with noise. You'd rather have one 3-hour conversation that matters than 25-minute ones that don't. You light up when someone says something true, when someone drops the performance, even for a second, because you've been watching people perform your whole life. And all you ever wanted was to meet someone who'd just stop. Sign 5. You process everything deeply, sometimes too deeply. A single comment someone made 2 years ago still lives in you somewhere. A decision you made in 2019 gets replayed sometimes, not out of guilt exactly, but out of this relentless need to understand, to see it from every angle, to know why. Psychologists call this rumination when it becomes painful, but at its root, it's just a mind that refuses to stay on the surface. You don't do anything casually. Not relationships, not work, not even the way you spend a quiet evening. Everything gets felt. Everything gets considered. That's not overthinking, that's depth. The problem was never the depth. The problem was living in a world that kept telling you to be shallower. Sign 6. You've always struggled to find where you belong, not because you're antisocial, but because you've never quite fit cleanly into any one box. You're too much for some people and not enough for others. Too serious in one room, too strange in another. You adapt, you code switch, you wear different versions of yourself, depending on who's watching, and somehow none of them feel completely true. There's a concept in psychology called the outsider within, the experience of being present in a space while simultaneously observing it from the outside. Like having one foot in the room and one foot in the hallway always. You know that feeling. And here's the reframe. Belonging was never your problem. Pretending was. You don't struggle to connect. You struggle to connect falsely. That's a different thing entirely, and it says something profound about your integrity. Sign 7. You've always sensed there's something more even when you couldn't name it. More to this life. More to people. More to the moments that most people walk right past. You feel it when the light changes in the late afternoon. When a piece of music does something to your chest, when a stranger says something true and you lock eyes for just a second too long, you've been chasing that feeling your whole life. Not wealth, not status, meaning the real kind, the kind that doesn't disappear when the applause stops. And here's what I want you to sit with. The world is very good at making people like you feel like a problem to be solved. Too sensitive, too intense, too much in your head, too particular, too slow to trust, too quick to feel. But consider the possibility, just for a moment, that you were never the problem. You were just rare, not better, not superior, just different in ways that the world doesn't always have a name for. And rare things are often misread before they're understood. The psychologist Carl Jung once wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who the room expects, not who the timeline pressures, who you actually are. You've probably spent most of your life trying to shrink that person, to make them quieter, more agreeable, easier to be around. But what if the thing you've been dimming is the most alive thing about you? You don't need to figure that out today. You don't need to do anything with it right now. Just let it be possible.